We all want to feel peace in our lives. Peace in our choices, our beliefs, our relationships, and our environment. I've learned that this desired contentment is often found through holding on to less. When we pare down what we own, what we consume, and what we value, we're left with what's intentional, a personalized curation of what is important and true and useful to us. I'm Shannon Leyko, and you're listening to Paring Down, a podcast aimed at helping you declutter not only your home, but any area of your life that's overwhelming. Here, we're having interesting and honest conversations about the physical and mental clutter that drowns out what truly matters to each of us. And together, we'll learn how to pare it all down, not for the sake of perfection or becoming rigid, rather so we can move through life with less overwhelm and more joy, wisdom, and peace. Hi, you guys. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about decluttering the garage because I got a lot of requests about a week or so ago for this episode. I'll explain that in a second. But first, I wanted to kick this off by telling you about a couple of resources that I offer that I feel like I very rarely mention here on the podcast. And it would be probably helpful for you to know about them because, listen, I love what I do. I love talking about decluttering. I've said it before. I'm really not in this to like gatekeep and force you to pay. Otherwise, I would not have a podcast where I give just like free information every single week. I have a free blog every Monday. I have a free newsletter every Wednesday. I put in an insane amount of information on my reels on Instagram and in those captions. So pretty much everything I offer is free, including a couple things I'm going to tell you here. There are a few things that are a couple bucks, and that's okay too, because I've worked really hard at pouring in my expertise and knowledge and experience into these different resources that do cost a couple bucks, but zero pressure. I want to just tell you about them in case they sound like something that could be truly helpful for you. That is literally my end goal, is to help as many people feel less overwhelmed by the amount of stuff in their houses and the obligations on their calendars, and just to live a life of intention rather than a life bogged down by all the stuff that just throws us into autopilot. So without further ado, let me run through this list of things that will all be linked in the show notes if you're interested. The first, I have a complete guide to decluttering kid stuff. This one is usually $21. Sometimes I throw it on sale for $14. It was on sale recently, so it's at $21 currently, which is still a really good price because a lot of people price their decluttering guides for like $97. And again, I just want it to be accessible for you. So that's the complete guide to decluttering kid stuff. This is not just toys, though toys are absolutely covered. It's 13 different categories, everything from all of their kitchen items to, yes, indoor toys. And then there's an outdoor toys category, an electronics category, linens, sentimental items and hand-me-downs. Gosh, I can't go through all 13 because I don't have it in front of me, but it took months to put this together. It has green flag items and red flag items to look for. Like, what should you probably keep, because I can't tell you what to keep and I can't tell you what to get rid of. That's the challenge when it comes to these decluttering guides. It's like, I can't do the work for you. I would love to. I think it's so much fun. But I can't. So you'll still have to do the work, and I don't know exactly what's important to you and what's not, what your kids use, what they don't, right? So I can't just be like, you only need 2 bowls. I don't know how many kids you have, and I don't know what kind of foods you guys eat. And, so you have to do a lot of this work yourself. But I write out some green flags to look for, some red flags to look for. I have a decluttering checklist of items that I would suggest to declutter. I give you a challenge for each category with a specific time set to it. So they're timer challenges. So I think like the toy one is 45 minutes. The kitchen one is 20 minutes. These are so you can actively get things on your calendar and know exactly what you're going to do in that window of time to kick off decluttering that category. I answer questions like, should I include my kids? How do I get them on board? I just kind of run through all of the things that I can think of that people have asked me or that would have been helpful for me as I try to declutter all of the kids stuff. So, yes, that's my big one. It's 30 pages, complete guide to decluttering kids stuff. You have those 13 categories. There's 2 pages per category, and hopefully it's done in a way that's like not overwhelming. You just, tackle it one category at a time. Okay, and the next thing I have that is my only other one you'd have to pay for, and it's $5. And that's my Instagram growth basics, because as many of you know, my Instagram grew from 0 to 50,000 in the first 10 months. We are now 10 and a half months in, and I'm at like 80,000. So I think will be kind of where I am when this episode drops. Today, as we speak, I'm at 76,000. So, I don't know what it's going to be in a week and a half from now, but it's grown quickly. It's gone slow and then fast, but that's kind of how Instagram works, right? It's like you stay consistent, and then like one day everything just blows up if you've been doing things right. And so I didn't want to, again, gatekeep how I did that, because I know there's so many people out there that would like to build an Instagram platform, whether it's for decluttering or a completely different thing. I'm also on the social media team for a huge content creator in the mental health space. She has over 400,000 followers. So I do have quite a bit of experience in the Instagram world. And so I offer my Instagram growth basics guide, and that's just $5. It's on sale for $5. The like normal price is $9.99, but it is on sale right now for $5. Okay, and then everything else is free. So I have your free Know Your Why worksheet, because if you don't know why you're decluttering, like your greater reasonings here, aligning with your core values, figuring out your dreams and your vision for your home, all of this good stuff. If you don't know that, it's going to be really hard to keep going or to make the tough choices. So I have a free worksheet you can go through that I think is really going to help you move through those hard periods when you are trying to declutter and just don't feel like it. I also have a free baby essentials list. This is for any new parent or expecting parent, or if you know a friend or a sister or whoever that is expecting and you want to send it to them, then by all means, please do that. And I just know that so many of us get cluttered because when we have kids, they come with so much stuff. So I wanted to help new parents kick off parenthood without the overwhelm, without all of the unnecessary stuff. So I made this baby essentials list that's a good starting point, and just say, hey, I'm just going to start with these things so that I'm not overwhelmed with stuff. And then, of course, you might want to build on it from there, depending on what you need, or I should say what you want. Okay, the next are, again, free things. I mentioned I have a blog post every Monday on theexpertbeginner.com. I have a newsletter, the Less Express, that comes out every Wednesday. It's a really simple, easy newsletter. LESS, the acronym is listen. So I tell you what's on the podcast this week. Excerpt, I tell you a motivating quote that is usually about decluttering or simplifying your life. S, the first S is for share. So I usually share either an excerpt from my own blog or just something I want to tell you. And the last one is simplify, and it's a short decluttering challenge for the week. So that's a really fun and easy way to keep your inbox motivating throughout your week, to kind of combat all of those consumerist emails coming at you trying to get you to buy stuff. And then, of course, I have new episodes here on the Paring Down podcast every single Tuesday. So Monday's a blog, Tuesday's a podcast, Wednesday's the newsletter. Almost every single day, you're going to get a reel on paring down. You have your free Know Your Why worksheet. You have your free baby essentials list. And then you have your complete guide to decluttering kid stuff, as well as your Instagram growth basics. There's a lot there. It's fun, though. I love making it all for you. Okay, so let's talk about our garages. I put up a question box on Instagram recently, and I asked you guys to name decluttering projects that have been hanging over your heads. And the 2 biggest answers were, unsurprisingly, the garage and the basement. And I, in that, mentioned that we had decluttered our entire garage this past January, and a lot of you requested a podcast episode walking you through how we did that. So that's what I'm doing today. A little background about our garage. So my husband, who, if you guys haven't listened to episode 19 of the podcast yet, definitely go back and do that so you can kind of get an idea of who he is and our decluttering dynamic, because he is a stuff guy. But anyways, he had basically a 2-car garage sized storage unit when we got married. And then we emptied that into our 2-car garage when we bought our first home together, about a year after we got married. So all of his stuff just came from the storage unit into the garage. I mean, you literally couldn't move in there. So I went through it a little bit there in Virginia Beach in that house, but we found out we were pregnant the day we moved into the house, and then he was out to sea half the year every year for our first 3 years of marriage. So it was slow going because of a hard pregnancy, also because we were still learning our communication with each other, right? Like we only knew each other for 2 months before we got engaged. And then we were married 4 months after that. And then about, gosh, maybe a month before the wedding, they told him he was going to have to start this process of going out to sea every 2 months. So he was 2 months gone, 2 months home, 2 months gone, 2 months home. So it turned into, it was half the year every year for the next 3 years, but it wasn't like all 6 months at a time, which is a blessing and a curse, right? Because the second you get into a routine without the person, then they come back. And anyways, the communication was tough because we were getting to know each other and we didn't have like any extended period of time together. It was either just like he got back home and we're trying to adjust to that. And then before you know it, you're adjusting to saying goodbye again. And that was really tough. And then a year after that, we got pregnant and we still were on that schedule. So anyway, the point of the matter is I did my best to declutter the garage, but obviously didn't do a ton. And then as a military family, we moved to Alaska when our son was 1.5 years old. And so we had decluttered. I had decluttered. No, he had helped, the best of his ability at that time to declutter that garage enough to get it into a 1-car garage that we had in Alaska. But then a fair amount of it actually went into a storage unit when we moved because the military will pay for a storage unit if you're moving overseas, which Alaska is considered an overseas job. So some of that went there. So then we moved here 3 years after that down to Florida. Now we have 3 kids and back into a 2-car garage. So I was like thinking, oh, well, it's going to be great because I had decluttered a fair amount while we were in Alaska. And so when we moved here, we put things in the garage. And at first it didn't seem so bad. I was like, there's not that much in there. And then I remembered we had the storage unit that everything else had been in while we were in Alaska. And then that all came into the garage. And then it was pretty full again. Not as full as it was in Virginia Beach because we've done work on it, but it was still pretty full. And the way that it works when you move this often, right? You have these movers from Virginia Beach to Alaska and they take everything out of the garage and then they shove it in that garage. And then they take everything out of that garage and then they shove it in the new garage. And unless you take everything out and like rearrange it the way you want it to be, when you move that much, there's just so much that kind of just gets put in weird places. You don't know where it is. And then it just kind of dies there and it moves to the next place and it gets shoved in an even weirder place. And it's really, really hard to organize the garage. And so I just was over it, frankly. We had decluttered the entire inside of our house. And so this past Christmas, my gift from my husband, but also from me, because we have a joint bank account, was to get an all-day sitter in January where she would watch the kids all day Saturday. And part of this gift from Aaron to me was not only for the babysitter, but to help me. And we took everything out of the garage in a single day and put it all back in. And that was my gift to myself. And I have no regrets whatsoever. So I'm going to walk you through how we did that garage all in one day when we had that sitter. And then at the end of this episode, towards the end, I'm going to offer ideas for how to tackle it if you can't really finagle an entire day or two to go through your garage. I don't want you to write off this episode if you're like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I don't have a babysitter that can watch them all day. I don't want to do it all by myself. I can't do it all in a day. There's no way. All these different excuses, if they're popping into your head right now, I think you're still going to be able to glean a lot from how we did this, even if you can't do it all in one fell swoop like we did. But also, if that kind of sounds like, if that piques your interest, if you're like, oh, I guess I could just hire a sitter for a day or drop my kids off at my parents' house if you have that luxury near you, whatever it is, and do your garage, I cannot recommend it enough because then it's just done. One day it's over, maybe 2. I don't know how cluttered your garage is. I mean, ours was pretty bad and we still did it in a day. So it is possible. And I think really putting it on your calendar, for me, getting a sitter, you know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Or if you have to like arrange childcare, you know it's going to happen. If you don't have kids, fine, still put it on the calendar. And that kind of forces you to do it. Okay, so let's start with what we did on a very practical level. We took everything out. I mean, we literally started at 8:30 in the morning. We started blasting the Hamilton soundtrack and we just started picking stuff up and bringing it into the driveway and the lawn, just full on as if we were movers, just my husband and me. And as we were taking things out, we generally tried to make like piles in the driveway. So we had, tools, or we had camping stuff. We had baking and cooking appliances. My husband's a big baker cooker. It is not me. If I had my way, we would not have a single appliance other than like a toaster. But anyways, he has all these extra like baking and cooking pans and food processors, preservers. I don't even know I don't know how to pronounce. I don't know anything. But anyways, my husband does, and I eat wonderful food. The point is we had that and hosting stuff. So like, we had paper plates and party napkins and all of that, anything we use for hosting. We had all of our bicycle stuff. We have beach stuff. We had sentimental boxes. We had holiday boxes. We had, and by we, I mean my husband had hobby boxes. You guys, the things that were in there. I actually, as I was prepping for this episode, I was like, can you remind me of just some of the hobbies that were in the garage when we decluttered that you let go of for the most part? We had DJ equipment. We had, well, this one actually was technically mine, but I never opened it. He had bought me for Christmas a couple of years ago a Cricut, to like make art projects. But I have a lot of other creative outlets in my life. And as cool and generous as that was, I never opened it. So that went. We were able to give that to a friend. He had wait, this one's so funny, a flair bartending kit. You guys, like, how like bartenders, flip bottles and I don't know, do things with flair. My husband had a kit. I don't even know what that entails. I'm like, were there rings of fire in there? Like, what was that? Okay, we had this huge fancy picnic basket. In fact, you guys, I'm going to whisper because I think he kept it. I think because I saw his face and I was like, didn't you have that big picnic basket? And I'm fairly certain that he was like, oh, yeah, I think we got rid of that too. I think he might have put it in the garage, or I meant in the attic, because we do have an attic, which really doesn't have anything in it now except for Christmas decorations. And I'm pretty sure the fancy picnic basket up there. He's just a romantic. He's like, I want to use it with you at some point. And I'm like, sweetheart, we don't even get to eat regular dinner together. Like, when are we going to go set up an elaborate thing down by the river? But anyways, okay, back to his hobbies. He had like a bunch of fishing gear. He's never gone fishing a day in his life. He said that was gifted to him. Anyway, he got rid of that. He had like beer brewing equipment. He has kept some of that. I mean, his hobbies know no bounds. And again, if you listen to the episode, that's part of what makes him so lovable is he has all these grand ideas. He's awesome and he's hilarious. And it's why I love him. But it's also, when it comes to the clutter, it's a thing. Okay, so we had these different like piles then in our driveway. So many people were like, oh, are you having a yard sale? And stopping by and like literally trying to take things. And I was like, listen, you can take it. Just let me make sure that I want to get rid of it because this is not actually a yard sale. Like the girls across the street came over and they're like, oh, can we have the Power Wheel? And, I was like, no, I'm sorry, girls. It's not for sale. We just took everything out of the garage. We were breaking hearts out there. So we then started dragging anything we didn't want to keep, like just the big ticket items that we knew for sure we weren't going to keep. Like there was kind of like a broken chair. There was a broken mini fridge. There was this like really gross old tarp situation, right? All of that then goes into the end of the driveway for the toss pile. And then for the donate pile, if there were things that I felt like we could actually sell or not even sell, but like people would want quickly, I started placing them kind of nicely in the grass. And once I had a couple of things on there, I took a picture of them and I put it on our neighborhood Facebook group. And I was like, here's some free stuff in our yard. And throughout the day, look in the comments, I'm adding more stuff to it. I'm telling you, within literally 4 minutes, like 5 things were gone from the yard. It was so funny, especially because there was some good stuff because I decided not to sell anything. So there was this extra step ladder and like every dude in the neighborhood wants an extra step ladder. You know what I mean? I really could have sold them, but at this point, I was just so done with that garage. I was like, we have survived financially this far without selling anything in the garage. And I'm just want it gone. And so that's the approach that we took. So once the entire garage was in our driveway and we looked like absolute hooligans, we then swept out the entire inside of the garage. It felt so good. I was like, we could put on a dance recital in here, And so at that point, we swept it all out. It looked great. We moved some shelving around because I wanted to envision how the garage could be functional. That's half the problem is when you have movers that shove everything in, you don't have the opportunity to move things where it would make the most sense for you. You just kind of deal with it where it is. So I imagined these zones in my head. I had a general idea of where we'd be putting things back. And kind of the way I did it was that like the front wall where the nose of your car would go, the shorter wall was for me, like not for me, but had hosting stuff, things that I needed to easily access, the kids' beach stuff, and then plus some of the cooking stuff, even though I don't access that. That's on that wall. And then the long wall was for all of Aaron's tools, for camping, for I don't know, whatever he wanted to keep over there, essentially. And then the idea was that we would not have any double layering. So, what would fit in the shelving against the walls is what we would keep. And that was our physical boundary so that it was easy to access everything. We're not trying to like climb over boxes to get to something behind it? So we did a once over like big declutter as everything was in the driveway. Like we walked through if there was that extra step stool, like I said, there was some baby gear we knew we'd never use again. The broken fridge, there were some outgrown kid bikes that we had gotten from like for free from a neighbor who had put them on their yard, but they didn't really work well for our kids. Like there was a random fruit hanger, maybe some kitchen appliances or pans that Aaron decided that he would never actually use, some hobby stuff he decided to let go of. So we did kind of like a quick overview, and all of that went either into the yard or into the toss pile at the end of the driveway. And then the forecast was like, hey, it's going to rain soon. And we like heard thunder and we're like, perfect. Okay. So everything is in the driveway. So we had to immediately get everything back into the garage as fast as possible. So we moved all of the toss and donate stuff under our porch awning. And luckily it all kind of fit in there, especially like the toss pile. You didn't have to worry about putting it nicely together. So that all went under there. And then we went into the garage to declutter all of those kind of miscellaneous boxes that we couldn't do during our once over big declutter of obvious items. So these like tubs to go through, moving boxes, the tedious stuff. Again, blasting music was really helpful for us. It like put us in a good mood, especially because we listened to like musicals, which you're going to be happy if you're listening to the Book of Mormon. I mean, just like skip the ones that might get you smited, but like the majority of it, so good. So we didn't put anything onto our shelving yet, though, when we put everything back in the garage, because this was not part of the plan. We planned to declutter in the driveway and only bring back into the garage what we were keeping. But because of the rain, we couldn't do that. So we didn't put anything on the shelving. So there would be no confusion that once it was gone through, it could make its way to the shelf in the like predetermined area that I'd zoned out in my little brain. So this is the thing. When you go to this tedious part, when you go work on box by box and tub by tub, one at a time, it actually goes way faster than you might think it will. And it's really fun and it's really satisfying because you realize how quick you empty a box and you're like, oh, I only have like 15 more of these to go. Or maybe you have more than that and that's okay. You don't need to think about the number, but just do them one at a time. Just get those hands moving, and it happens, you guys. You can do it. It is possible. It's just overwhelming when you look at it as a whole. But when you just look at it one box at a time and you open it like it's a little Christmas present, it starts to become kind of fun, and you can move faster and faster as you get good at kind of that decluttering muscle throughout the day if you do it in one fell swoop like we did. So we had boxes of books, we had boxes of just like random stuff of Aaron's like old schoolwork or souvenirs or costumes. Yes, costumes. Again, not surprising for those who know Aaron. But anyway, and part of me was like, oh, opening surprise boxes is like kind of dangerous, right? Because you clearly haven't needed these in all of these years. So should you even tempt yourself by looking, or do you want to just like toss it and you never remember what was in it anyway? And so who cares? But overall, he was really good about letting a lot of it go. I had a few plastic tubs that were in long-term storage when we had been in Alaska with sentimental items like yearbooks, my cap and gown, even some of my brother's stuff that I ended up having to bring to him, old photo albums, my horseback riding ribbons. Fun fact, I used to be very into horseback riding. I actually trained with an Olympic rider, and my dream was to be in the Olympics. Equestrian was my entire life through middle and like early high school. So I had my ribbons and like pageant program books from when I was Miss New York, when I was competing in Miss Virginia, and so it had your like page with your sponsors and all the fun facts about you, just the program book from that year. So I had all of that kind of stuff to go through, and I really pared down all of it. And all the sentimental items we decided to keep. So a lot of them we got rid of, right? So like Aaron had boxes, I mean, 2 or 3 boxes of mugs, you guys, like coffee mugs because he had this dream. Again, it's always for Aaron. It's attached to some wonderful idea. He had this dream that one day he would open up a coffee shop and he would serve his coffee to patrons 100% out of mugs that he had collected from various places around the country and the world. I mean, so sweet. But also my husband's an engineer in the Coast Guard and he's not opening a coffee shop. So, but I love that dream for him, and maybe someday, I don't know, as a third career when he retires. But anywho, he did decide to part with his coffee mugs, but any sentimental items, not like that, but the ones we decided to keep, like, some of the photo albums that I've actually gone through and rearranged and put in different photo albums. But I kept one horseback riding ribbon because my daughter will think that's cool and it's special to me. I honestly don't even know if there's really much else that I kept because I don't think I kept my cap and gown. I definitely got rid of a lot of yearbooks. If you guys listen to episode 5 of the Paring Down podcast, it's all about sentimental items. So I'll kind of leave it to that episode to explain to you how I decided what to keep with sentimental items. But anyways, we brought any of that inside the house so that I could then figure out organization for it because I was like, if it's important to me, it shouldn't just be sitting in the garage, And so something I recommend is definitely decluttering your interior living space before you try and tackle the garage or the basement. Because it's easier to do your living spaces than it is to just like go into the endless pit of the garage or the basement. So you'll have strengthened that decluttering muscle inside your house. But then on top of that, you'll have open space to bring things in that are now going to live inside of your house, just even as a temporary space. So for us, we had a very decluttered guest room. So that's where all the sentimental stuff went, or the very few items that I did want to sell on Facebook Marketplace after reevaluating a few things, or my husband wanted to make sure we sold them, those went into the guest room for me to take care of. And you might be like, now you're creating another pile. It was not that much. Let me tell you, it was really not that much. And on top of it, it was okay. Like I wanted to get through my garage and then I could focus on going through the guest room, right? Like one thing at a time. And eventually it does all get done. So anyway, back into the garage and going through all these bins and boxes. I obviously got through my stuff a lot faster. There was less of it. I'm also a decluttering freak. So I am wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. So then I was really just Aaron's assistant. And as he was going through all the tools and bungee cords and whatever else he had, I would grab a box of like camping stuff and bring it over to him. He'd do a quick look and say, okay, we can donate that. Or I would, help him go through his tools and answer his questions and decide with him if he wanted to keep or toss. And I would take things from him and put them in the trash or the toss or the donate bin or whatever, right? Like I was just the Vanna White of the decluttering experience, but we were doing it together as a team. And it was fun, actually. So we started it at 8:30 a.m. and ended by 6 p.m. And you could still put on a dance recital in our garage when we were done. Instead of it being just full of stuff where you couldn't access any of the walls or anything like that, the whole center was completely cleared out. And we just had that one, not double layer, but that one layer of stuff against the wall on the shelving units. And that was it. And oh my gosh, it felt so good. Now, did it take a little bit of extra work the next day or whenever to take things to the dump and to take things to the donation center? Yes, of course. I just put things in my car. I tried to do like one load a day for the week, and eventually everything got taken out and no neighbors complained. We put a tarp over everything on our front porch so we didn't look like quite as hooligan-y, and it was fine. Okay, so here are some suggestions if you cannot take the full day approach. And like I said, don't rule it out. Don't rule it out. If you can get a sitter or you have family or someone to watch the kids, or you don't have kids that aren't need to be watched or whatever, it's really, really great to do an entire like large chunk of time. It's so satisfying. It's just so satisfying. You can get in the zone. You have nothing else planned for the day. You're not trying to get anywhere else because you've dedicated this day to decluttering. You've told people, no, sorry, I can't hang out. Sorry, I can't do this. This is my Christmas present day. It's great. But for a piecemeal approach, go ahead and set aside 2 hours on your calendar this weekend. Like, I think that's a significant enough amount of time that you're going to be able to make enough progress to be excited about it and want to keep going. So literally write it on your calendar. That is the number one approach. Put it in your calendar. Okay, Saturday morning from 10 to 12, I'm going to do something in the garage or the basement. And then step 2, zone way down. Don't walk into the garage without a plan. Say, I'm going to do just the 2 shelves on that shelving unit to the left, or I am going to do just the top of that catch-all table that everything gets thrown onto. I'm going to do just 3 boxes. I'm going to open 3 boxes and go through those. Honestly, those things will probably take you less than 2 hours, but go ahead and start small and zone down exactly what you're going to do in those 2 hours. The next one, you just get in there and you do it. It's 10 o'clock. All right, get your hiney in the garage, turn on some tunes, and get going. Have a trash bag with you. Have a donation box with you, or a donation bag if you don't have an Amazon box sitting around, or things are going to be too big for a box. Fine. Decide ahead of time a standard for what you're willing to put in the time to sell. So this can be either a dollar amount, like if you think you could get more than $25 or $50 for something, then you will try and sell it. If you don't think you're going to be able to sell it for that, then just cut your losses. You want to declutter your garage. That's the most important thing right now, and put it in a donation box. Or if you don't want to do a dollar amount, you can make your standard a specific number of items. Out of these 3 boxes I'm going through today, out of these 2 shelves I'm going over today, I'm only allowed to sell 3 things from today's lot. So that makes you way more picky and choosy about only choosing the best, and then truly getting some decluttering done. You're not sitting there, oh, I'm going to put this in my sell pile, and then your sell pile becomes your maybe pile, and then everything just doesn't work out, right? Choose 3 things. That's all I'm allowed to sell. Everything else has to go into the trash, the donate, or the keep pile that you're going to reorganize back into that space. I would say that when you approach a garage or a basement, though, go into it thinking, I am going to declutter or trash the vast majority of this because it's been sitting in here and I can't access it anyway. It hasn't been improving my life, so clearly I don't need it. Okay, so the default setting is to toss or donate. It is not to keep. Default, toss, or donate. Okay, really start moving your hands. The reason decluttering experts say that you should make swift decisions is because we easily second guess ourselves. And some people might say to slow down so you don't face regret. And listen, I respect that. We all have different needs when we're decluttering. But I will say that specifically for items sitting in your garage or your basement, not necessarily things that are in your house that you interact with regularly and you might need to think a little bit stronger about before you get rid of them. For things that you've literally not seen in years or you haven't used and they're just sitting in your garage in your basement, they clearly are not bettering your life. So make some fast decisions about getting rid of them. You will move through it a lot faster. You're going to get the thing done. You want this garage cleared out. It's going to happen if you move quickly, and you're not going to second guess all this stuff that hasn't been benefiting your life whatsoever forever anyway. Okay, so next, try not to make a maybe pile. Normally I say do an archive if you're not sure if you want to get rid of something, which means you put it away in a box out of sight for a few months, see if you miss it or need it. If you don't, then you donate it. And that can feel easier on our little souls than like immediately donating things that we're on the fence about. I love me an archive for those kinds of items. However, you've essentially already done an archive with those forgotten garage items or forgotten basement items. They have been sitting out of sight for months and years at a time, and you don't need them. So you don't do a maybe pile or an archive. Make these decisions. For sentimental items that you come across, it is okay. Of course, it's okay to keep ones that feel really important to you. Like I said, I kept some of the ones that I came across. But go ahead and listen to that episode 5 that I mentioned on how to decide what sentimental items to keep and which ones to get rid of. And I'm just going to point you there. I don't want to go into a whole nosedive of sentimental items, but be gentle with yourself. Don't feel like you have to declutter it all, but also don't keep it all. A big piece, especially if you're doing it piecemeal, is to make sure you have a designated donation location. Ideally your car. So I don't mean the location that you're going to take it to, also that, but like when you have a donate pile or a box that gets full or whatever, have somewhere that you're going to put that so it's not just staying in the space and you forget what's your donate pile, what's your keep pile, and now you still have another pile in the basement. Get it out of the basement, get it out of the garage, and put it somewhere where you know you were going to be taking it to its next home. So for me, I put it straight into the car if I can. For massive projects like this, listen, it's just not a great time to become an environmentalist. You are not an environmentalist if you already own all this stuff to begin with, because the real problem with how this affects the environment and landfills is that the fact that it was created to begin with, that these products were produced at the start, whether they're in your basement or they're at a landfill. If they're not made of biodegradable material, they will be on this planet forever. Your basement is not like heaven, it's on the earth and it will be in there, so just take them to Goodwill. Right now, your goal is to get this huge decluttering project done, and you can make better, greener choices moving forward, but you cannot wear all the hats at one time. I respect wanting to be a good person. I care a lot about the environment. I've started to embrace slow fashion. I definitely declutter in a more environmentally friendly fashion now, all of this stuff. So it's not to say those things aren't important, but if you have a ton of stuff you're trying to move out, go ahead and focus on the main thing, which is living in a more decluttered space that's going to lower your stress and encourage your buying habits in the future to be a lot slower. And that is going to affect the environment a lot better in the long run, is if you're just not buying all of this crap over and over again and refilling up your space like you have done in the past. Lesson learned, right? So take him to Goodwill, or just put any of those big obvious things out front and throw up a photo on your neighborhood Facebook page. And if they're not claimed by the next day, donate them. Don't wait around forever. Okay, so when you're done with that designated zone for the day, your 2 hours or whatever, get your calendar back out immediately, and schedule time for the next declutter, for the next zone. Especially while you're in there, you're probably going to be able to identify what area you want to do next. Write it down, and write down when you're doing it, and so that you can stay on track. And a big way to stay on track in between these decluttering sessions is to listen to decluttering podcasts, which you're already doing. Congratulations, you're here. I'm so proud of you. Or audiobooks about decluttering to really stay focused and motivated throughout the week. You might think like, I don't want this to become my entire personality like it is yours, Shannon, but it is important to keep it front of mind. If this is a big deal to you, if you want to get this done, it's okay to spend a couple of weeks or months like listening to media that reminds you that this is important to you, so it pumps you up to dive back in next weekend. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be like me and listen and read decluttering material forever and ever. Amen. I mean, you might become addicted to it like me, which is cool too. But like, it's cool. Go ahead and consume that. I think it'll help you on many levels, not just your garage, to consume decluttering podcasts or audiobooks. And like I said, then of course, once you're doing the decluttering, turn on that music. It makes it goes faster. You get in a groove, and it's just more fun. So the biggest thing I leave you with is this: you can do it. The garage and the basement often feel like impossible tasks, but they are not impossible. It might not happen overnight, but if you can just keep with that cyclical calendar of motivation and doing it every weekend or 3 nights a week or whatever you want to do it to piecemeal it, and you kind of take that intake of decluttering and minimalism media, then you will do it, and you can do it. And again, I do highly recommend setting aside large chunks of time. I mean, I love doing it all in one day. I can't say this enough. Do it if you can. But these larger chunks of time make it really intentional, and you will be amazed at how much you can get through, especially as you build that decluttering muscle, and those trash bags and donations, they start to fill up real fast. As always, let me know if there's anything else you want me to cover on the podcast. I love getting ideas from you guys because I want to help. That's my entire goal, and that's the reason I'm here. So please let me know if there's another space or category that you want me to cover. Also, if you have not left a 5-star review yet, I will love you forever and ever. If you could do that really fast, you just scroll down on my podcast page and then you press the 5 stars. Voila, all done. It helps so much in spreading this podcast on the back end of things. Bonus points if you write like a sentence or two. It doesn't have to be a long, beautiful thing. My friend, actually, who listens to the podcast, admitted to me that she told Chat GPT to write a review for my podcast for her. I was like, girl, you're winning. I love that. But you can also just write, I like it. She's a little loco, but I'm here for it. The end, right? It can be as short as, I like to listen to it when I drive to work. And it just will really help grow the podcast. So shameless plug, please leave me a little review. Thank you so much. Next week, we are talking about some motivation to unplug and really be present in life. As always, not in a shamey way whatsoever. Our guest has a really cool business that gives people a place to connect and enjoy the company of their family and friends without the tech distractions. So I think you're going to love it and feel really, really excited about enjoying life after you listen to that episode. So that's coming up next week on Paring Down, and I will see you then. You just listened to an episode of Paring Down with me, Shannon Leyko. If you enjoyed the show, it would mean the world if you can leave a review wherever you listen and share this episode with a friend. Those reviews really are what keeps a podcast on its feet for the long haul, and I will read every single one with a huge smile on my face. So thank you ahead of time. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe. Also, be sure to follow along on Instagram at paring_down, where I offer lots of tips and inspiration for paring down, along with what's new here on the podcast. Till next time.